events throughout the country and primarily focusing on the battleground states. Now, over the weekend, Democrats amped up their efforts to mobilize Puerto Rican and other Latino voters in the critical swing state of Pennsylvania, building on the outrage that many in the community feel after Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden in New York. One of the Democrats' most prominent Puerto Rican voices came to the heart of a heavily Latino community over the weekend to energize supporters. And that voice happens to be that of Jennifer Lopez. We also saw Bad Bunny, the singer, the rapper. We saw Ricky Martin and other prominent Latinos speak out against the comedian that made those horrific racist statements during a Trump rally at Madison Square Garden. Donald Trump nor his team have disavowed the comedian's comments about Puerto Rico. And the GOP's closing election message on health is baffling and worrying a whole string of experts. No Obamacare, questioning vaccines, no fluoride in drinking water. They're all Republican assertions in the final days of the presidential campaign. Donald Trump has said that he will give Robert F. Kennedy pretty much carte blanche to remake our Health and Human Services Department. And as the czar over Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, if Trump is elected, would be over the Centers for Disease Control and the FDA and other regulatory bodies responsible for the health of Americans. And that has scientists and medical doctors extremely nervous, given that Robert F. Kennedy is not a scientist, nor is he a physician. Also in the news today, we are in the final stretch before Election Day, and our average the average polls show an incredibly tight race. Now, Vice President Kamala Harris has held her leads nationally and in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nevada, all key swing states. But her lead in Pennsylvania, according to some polls, shrank in the past week. According to, again, some polls, Trump still leads in Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. And the Supreme Court today agreed to hear a complex dispute over how Louisiana draws congressional maps that could affect the power of Black voters in the state and the balance of power in Congress. Now, this case will not impact tomorrow's election since it won't be decided for months. But legal experts said it could have significant ramifications for how states consider the issue of race in drawing congressional districts to comply with the Voting Rights Act, and therefore could impact future elections. And Vice President Kamala Harris made a surprise appearance on Saturday Night Live. I'm sure many of you saw that episode. It was the last episode of the show before Election Day, which again, the final day for casting your ballot in this year's presidential election is tomorrow. Kamala Harris appeared during the cold open alongside Maya Rudolph, who regularly portrays the vice president. And in other news today, rural Arizona shows how Trump allies could try to thwart election certification. 2 Republican county leaders were criminally charged after delaying certification of the 2022 election results. And those citizens and residents of Arizona are worried that was just a dress rehearsal for the 2024 elections. Many states, including Pennsylvania, have concerns about those who may try to suppress the vote. The district attorney for Philadelphia, one of the biggest cities in the state of Pennsylvania, had a press conference today, and he said anybody that tries to intimidate voters or tries any what he calls shenanigans at the polls tomorrow, he wanted to let them know that Philadelphia was not going to, as he said, F around with that kind of conduct. He was very emphatic. This is the district attorney for Philadelphia, county of Philadelphia, saying that his office took very serious any efforts to try to suppress the vote or to intimidate voters who go to the polls. And some other news, Michael Jordan, remember him? One of the most celebrated NBA players of all times, Well, you may have seen a post on the social media site formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, saying that Michael Jordan was supporting Donald Trump. Well, I'm here to tell you that is fake news. That post was later deleted. You can't even find it now. And Michael Jordan has issued a full-throated and very, very impassioned denial, saying that that was some kind of artificial intelligence, some kind of fake post. He has not endorsed any candidate in this year's election. He says he tends to stay out of politics. Some folks, according to Michael Jordan, may call that selfish, but he says he has decided that he should focus on being a basketball player and now an owner of sports teams. So if you happen to see or anyone shares with you anything suggesting that Michael Jordan has endorsed Donald Trump, note that that is absolutely positively false. He has not endorsed anyone in this race. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. Well, in this hour, I'll be joined by two of my favorite contributors, Dr. Hassan Jeffries. He's a professor of history at Ohio State University, and Dr. Carlos Hills. He is a professor at the University of Oklahoma. He's also the author of several books regarding the murder of Emmett Till. Also an expert on reparations. Always a lot smarter when I spend time with Professor Jeffries and Professor Hill. They're going to help us make sense of all of the news today about this election. It is going to be nonstop for the next 24, 36 hours. And if this election is anything like the 2020 election, you'll recall we did not know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won the election until Saturday after voting day on Tuesday. You'll remember that infamous call where Kamala Harris is talking to Joe Biden saying, "We did it, Joe. We did it, Joe." That became a viral moment as they were celebrating that they had actually won for president and vice president. So those of you who are going to be glued to your television sets tomorrow, starting around 7 p.m. Eastern time, because that's when the first polls will close and numbers will start to come in, whether you're watching cable news or network news or you're on your phone, you'll start getting results from the various states around 7 p.m. tomorrow night. KBLA is going to be bringing you live election results throughout the night tomorrow, starting with Areva Martin in real time. I'll be on the air at 4 p.m. with my co-host, Dr. Nee Corte, from A More Perfect Union right here on KBLA. He's a national political correspondent. He's going to be broadcasting live from Howard University in Washington, D.C. That's the site of the VP's election night party. Each candidate traditionally will have an election night party in one of the states, sometimes at their headquarters, sometimes at other places, to bring their supporters together. Kamala Harris chose Howard University. That is a historic destination for her. It's her alma mater where she went to college. And I can't even imagine the excitement that those students right now are feeling to be able to witness history on their own campus. So Dr. Nee will be with the reporters and news anchors and all kinds of news media that will be on that Howard University campus tomorrow. So he and I will be doing double duty from 4 to 6 p.m. We'll have lots of interviews with pundits and newsmakers and surrogates and voters and folks who've been watching this campaign closely as we are reporting out the election results. And picking up the coverage at 6 p.m. and carrying it through the night will be Tavis Smiley and my colleague Dominique DePrima. So make sure you stay tuned in tomorrow night, starting at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here at KBLA for all things election night coverage. I know many of you will be at big election night parties. You'll be watching with family and friends. A lot of my friends are saying, "I'm so nervous. I can't be at home alone. I got to be with a group of people." So find your tribe, because you definitely want to be with some folks you trust, people that are positive and upbeat and who are encouraged about the future of this country tomorrow as we all watch as those returns start to roll in. In hour two, going to be going again all in on the election with a Black male voter organizer who's been working in Nevada to take his temperature on what he's feeling about the state of Nevada, a key swing state. We know the VP was there this weekend. She was there as well as so many of her national surrogates. Also, Naomi Asuji, she's a professor of sociology at UCLA. We're going to be talking about, what we expect in terms of different demographics. There's been so much reporting about how folks are going to vote. We obviously won't know any of that until the returns come in tomorrow. But make sure you stick around for hour 2 because we're going to be talking about that very critical voting block of Black men. But before I bring on my guests, I got to pay tribute to Quincy Jones. You probably have already heard the news. This just incredible, accomplished, unsurpassed artist who combined jazz, rhythm and blues, and classical music and really transformed the way we think about music, whether it was his work with Michael Jackson, Frank Sinatra, Aretha Franklin, you name it, anyone that is on the music scene or has been on the music scene in the last 50 years, 60 years probably crossed paths with Quincy Jones. He passed away at the age of 91 today. His publicist reported that out. I saw a beautiful picture on social media of his family, his extended family. They were reportedly at his home in Bel Air, California, when he passed away, seemingly peacefully, hopefully peacefully in his sleep. Again, 7 decades. So I said 60 years, but let's add to that another decade and say for 70 years, Quincy Jones was on the music scene. He, again, worked with all of the greats from Frank Sinatra. He worked with Tupac Shakur. He just transformed the way we think about music in this country. Responsible, some say, for some of Michael Jackson's greatest hits. A beloved figure, entrepreneur, composer, music. He wrote music. He composed music. He made stars. Hit maker, I should call him that first and foremost. And just overall kind individual. Was a philanthropist. Gave a lot of money to charity. Supported a lot of causes, helped to grow generations of folks who work in the music industry. So beloved. And if you go on social media, you'll see all the tributes to him from various folks who've worked with him. I'm looking at some of the photos of him as a young man, just incredibly handsome. I mean, some of the pictures of him as a young man in his 20s and 30s, just a beautiful human being, both inside and out. Again, our prayers are with the family of Quincy Jones. We pay tribute to him, the man, the music, the legacy. He may have passed away from this earth, but his legacy will always, always be remembered. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
To Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. Can I confess something to you? As a longtime California voter, I am so over our ballot proposition process. So many ballot measures, so little time. Too often, our so-called leaders don't really lead, and too often, many of these ballot measures are misleading. I mean, does yes or no mean I'm voting for it or against it? Talk about a ball of confusion. But here's what I know for sure. I am abundantly clear about yes on Measure A, which would create thousands of new affordable housing units and expand drug and mental health treatment. Every day I step outside our radio station here in Leimert Park, I see what happens when we neglect, when we avoid addressing these critical issues in our beloved community. It is quite candidly a shame and a disgrace. And no, it's not just you. I am personally calling City Hall and care agencies routinely as well. Is this the Tavis Smiley? Yes, it is. I refuse to let the suffering of our people get rendered invisible. Frankly, the reason I'm talking to you about this right now on the radio is because I have not seen the kind of leadership I had expected and hoped to see to get Measure A passed. I guess my hope needs some help. So I'm sharing this message with you with the hope that you will do the right thing for them and for us. And just so you don't get it twisted, them is us. Yes, on A. With the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
This is 30-second Chevy Holiday Red Tag Radio, produced for Carol H. Williams by Radio Bob Resort on October 31st, 2024. Spot title Every Adventure, short 30. ISKI code GCSV0022000.
Add confidence to every holiday adventure and get it done with a rugged and capable Chevy truck or SUV. Find your red tag. Get 0% APR financing for 36 months on select popular Chevy models when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
Offer available on all 2025 Equinox and 2024 Silverado, Equinox EV, Blazer EV, and Silverado EV models. Monthly payment is $2,860 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 22.2%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 12/2/24.
On your period, sudden gushes happen without warning. But now you can say goodbye to stand-up gush fears thanks to Always Ultra Thins with rapid dry technology. It absorbs gushes 2 times faster than the leading store brand and gives you up to 100% leak-free protection. Hello, clean and comfortable with Always Fear No Gush.
Hey, John, why so glum?
I just got let go. The company's downsizing. This is the 3rd time in the last 2 years. I'm done with this.
Have you thought about My Computer Career? I've heard they can train you for a career in IT in just a few months, including cybersecurity and the basics of AI. And you don't need prior training or experience. Now that's a recession-resistant career.
Wow, thanks. I'll check them out.
Go to mycomputercareer.edu and take the free career evaluation. mycomputercareer.edu. Financial aid is available for qualified.
All right, I am back. And in this hour, Dr. Hassan Jeffries and Dr. Carlos Hill are joining me. And in hour 2, we're going to be talking to some voter organizers on the ground in Las Vegas, Nevada, as well as a sociology professor, because so many folks are trying to game out who is going to vote and what's going to drive those voters to the polls. So we're going to do some projections ourselves right here on KBLA. But before we do that, so much riding on this election, Dr. Hill. Friends are calling me saying they're so anxious, like they can't sleep at night. They're having anxiety. They don't want to be alone tomorrow. How are you feeling?
Areva, I'm a Black Studies professor like my colleague Hassan, and I've been talking to my colleagues and they told me not to worry. Black people, we have weathered the worst storms. Donald Trump is not the worst of these, but we should be concerned because there's so much at stake. I really have said, Areva, on this show many times, existential election. The choice is democracy or Trumpism. Trumpism takes us down fascism, and all the things that he's revealed in the last few days, healthcare, and then just it's democracy or whatever Americans think Donald Trump represents. That's the choice.
Yeah, and that's a pretty scary choice when you think about it, Professor Jeffries, that 70 million people, 5 million, depending on who you listen to, are expected to vote for Donald Trump, despite everything that we've witnessed him do, the things that he has said, the things that he has done on stage over just the last week alone, seemingly would disqualify him and would cause people to say, my God, I don't want this guy representing me anywhere, and definitely not on the world stage. But yet they're expecting 70 million plus people to vote for him.
Yeah, you would think that it would be disqualifying. The litany, even forget about everything after January 6th. Everything before January 6th would have been disqualifying. So the fact that we can anticipate, based upon the 2020 returns, that 70 plus million people, 70 plus million Americans will cast a ballot saying that this is the direction that we want to go, this meaning MAGA, this meaning Donald Trump, is in fact sobering. So, I'm hopeful that Kamala Harris pulls out. I'm hopeful that democracy wins out. But the fact that we know that 70 plus million will be casting a ballot for this other direction, for authoritarianism, That has to keep us on our toes. So if we get the outcome that democracy, that those who believe in freedom, those who believe in democracy want, that it does not mean that we can rest. It means that we have that much more work to do, because there are so many in this country who do not believe that democracy is worth protecting, democracy is worth fighting for, but believe instead that democracy is the problem.
Areva, can I just say one thing?
Oh, absolutely. Jump in.
Thank you, Brother Jeffries, for saying that. That's what we have to hear. It don't matter if Democrats win or Republicans win, it's still a massive problem. We have a political problem in this country where we have people who want to think that fascism is democracy, and then we have other people who think that coalition building is democracy. That's a massive political problem for a country our size. We can't act like one side won or lost. We are losing. We are losing as a country when we don't see the massive political problem that 70 million people, like you said, Areva, will vote for fascism. And somehow it's going to be better tomorrow after we vote? No. We have a problem that we have to attend to. It won't end because Donald Trump doesn't get elected, which he won't.
I worry about that because I was asking Dr. Jeffries, a friend of mine who ran for office, was in office in California for over 30 years in different public, different offices, county, city, and state level. And as both of you know, I was out on a 7-state battleground tour, just got back to LA a couple of days ago. And in each of those states, the swing states, in the big cities, talking to largely Black voters, knocking on doors, canvassing, listening to voters. And one thing I heard over and over again was how unhappy people were with their elected officials, how they don't hear from them, how they don't see them until election time. So I was asking my friend who had been in office for 30 years, like, how seriously should we take this? Is this just like griping, like everybody hates their lawyer? Does everybody hate politicians? Or are politicians just doing a really, really poor job of connecting with voters other than when it's an election season? And he kind of said, well, there's probably some of the both happening at the same time. And the reason I raised that question is because you both said something has to happen beyond this election. But it seems like we spend billions of dollars. I mean, we flood the airway with ads. We have, hundreds of thousands of people. I saw something where Kamala Harris's team had knocked on like 900,000 doors in Pennsylvania, made over 200,000 calls. I mean, all great work, great ground game. But I don't think we do much in this country, whether we're Republicans or Dems, after these elections are over. Does that change? Is there something unique about this election that you think will change that dynamic and people might start to feel like I see my elected official other than when they need my vote?
I would like to think so, but we will not know until Wednesday or Thursday. I mean, we won't know if lessons have been learned until after the election. We can go back to 2008. The reason why Barack Obama won in part was because he was able to mobilize a coalition that we just hadn't seen before. His ground game was incredible, even in states here like Ohio. I mean, it was him and the team that he put together. But after the election, they kind of disappeared, and we as the electorate, us pro-democracy folk, as a whole, we were like, okay, good. We won the election. Now you go out and do what we elect you to do, rather than keeping the momentum and continuing to build. So we saw that after the election of 2008, what happened in 2010? The Tea Party, the political conservatives, they were the ones who actually built after their electoral defeat and were in a place to mobilize. We were not. We became complacent. I wonder, and perhaps Dr. Hill has a better sense of this, if people understand, and it seems that there's a significant percentage of folk who are coming out, turning out, and voting for, who plan to vote for Harris, that they understand that democracy is on the line. That this is no longer about policy disputes, right? Policy differences. This is, are you for democracy or against democracy? That after the election, when we prevail, that we recognize that this democracy is fragile, that we are literally and will still be on the precipice of retaining it or losing it. And if we have that realization, will we then lean into and try to build something that allows for sustained momentum, I will say this though about elected officials. Part of it is they spend so much of their time having to fundraise that after the election, right? I mean, this is a product of the way we've created this electoral system, requiring so much money to run for office that they spend so much time doing that they're not spending the time as much as I would like to see them on the ground engaging with people. Because if you don't do that, if Sherrod Brown, for example, doesn't spend the next 6 years raising 30, 40, $50 million, then he will not have a shot at winning the Senate seat when he wins Tuesday. So
that's a great point. Hold that point, because I do want to talk about money in this election, because goo gobs have been spent by both sides. And I do want to talk about what does that look like to try to preserve or shore up our democracy. Stay with us. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
The right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
Amber Payton with 4 things you should know from BIN News. Sean Diddy Combs' lawyers are seeking a gag order to stop witness statements outside of court. They cite grand jury witness Courtney Burgess in particular, who has given multiple interviews recently, which Diddy's team calls false and defamatory. Diddy is jailed in New York City awaiting trial on federal charges. Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to win California by a significant margin in Tuesday's election, but her lead may be smaller than President Joe Biden's in 2020. The latest and last poll before the election out of UC Berkeley shows Harris with 57% support from likely voters compared to 35% for former President Donald Trump. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams' administration says security is set for tomorrow's presidential election in the city, with 2 police officers at each polling site and social media monitoring for disruptions. And actor Eddie Murphy will be playing music icon George Clinton in an upcoming biopic. The film is set to be directed by Bill Condon. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Keeping you updated with the latest out of Malibu, PCH southbound between Tuna Canyon Road and Topeka Canyon Boulevard remains reduced to 1 lane for major road work, and stop traffic continues just before Big Rock Drive, over 25 minutes. Over in Costa Mesa, watch for heavy traffic forming on the 55 North between the 405 and the 4th Street Irvine Boulevard interchange. Yorba Linda is 91 East before Gibson Canyon Road. Over 20 minutes of the backup runs heavy from Glassell Street Kramer Boulevard split as an accident remains on the right shoulder. Heavy traffic in Porter Ranch's DeSoto Avenue on the 118 East before Balboa Boulevard runs heavy up to 10 to 15 minutes as the stall has been moved to the right shoulder.
The Metropolitan Water District of Southern California is here to help you break up with your lawn and upgrade to a more water-wise landscape. Visit bewaterwise.com for rebate info. Again, that's bewaterwise.com. Brought to you by the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
USC's women's basketball team, ranked number 3 in the country, won their season opener today. The Trojans overcame 26 turnovers to beat Mississippi 68-66, a game that was played in Paris. All-American Juju Watkins led the Trojans with 27 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. The sophomore from Compton was able to finish the game despite suffering a bloody nose. The Trojans ended the game making 17 straight free throws. The Clippers are one of 5 NBA teams that have not won a home game this season. The list includes Detroit, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Utah. The Clippers are 0-4 in their new arena, the Intuit Dome. They're at home tonight against San Antonio. Jackson State is the only HBCU football team ranked in this week's top 25 Division I AA poll. Jackson State at 7-2 moved up 3 spots to number 20. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where climate is king. Climate is king.
To help combat climate change, LADWP is helping neighborhoods have better access to electric vehicles by awarding nearly $130 million in EV rebates to customers just like you. From big savings on used EVs to building new charging plazas, LADWP is charging ahead to help all Angelenos experience the benefits of EVs. Get rebates of up to $4,000 for a used EV and $1,750 for a charger. Learn more at LADWP.com/EV. That's LADWP.com/EV. Hey, LA residents, it's planting season and the perfect time to get shade trees growing around your home. LADWP and City Plants are giving every resident up to 7 free trees. That's right, 7 free trees delivered right to your door. Trees are great for the environment, help improve air quality, and can help you save on your bill when you use less air conditioning to stay cool indoors. Learn more at ladwp.com/free trees. That's ladwp.com/free trees.
This is Congresswoman Maxine Waters. You can call me Auntie Maxine. I'm running for re-election to Congress, and Vice President Kamala Harris is running for President of the United States. We both need your support and your vote. Maxine Waters for re-election to the 43rd Congressional District, and Vice President Kamala Harris for President of the United States. What a team. More affordable housing, support for health care for everyone, more capital for small businesses, more full disability for deserving veterans, lower taxes for the average taxpayer, making the big billion-dollar corporations pay their fair share, a criminal justice system that is respectful and fair for everyone, not a system that locks up the little people while too many of the rich and powerful commit crime and don't get convicted. Fairness and justice for all. Yeah, we can do this. This is Congresswoman Maxine Waters speaking truth to power. This is Congresswoman Maxine Waters, and I approve this message.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way Black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
I'm back with Dr. Hassan Jeffries and Dr. Carlos Hill, and in hour 2, going to be talking with voter organizers on the ground in Nevada, very critical battleground state, and a sociology professor from UCLA about what we can expect in terms of the demographics that are going to be voting in this election. There's been a lot of reporting about Black folks and now Puerto Ricans and other groups. What is driving each of these groups to the polls? Before we went to break, we were talking, though, about upholding our democracy despite who wins the election. And I have a lot of concerns about that. My friend, who's been in public office for 30 years, he says one of the things he's most concerned about is the way that Donald Trump has changed, he thinks, perhaps permanently, the way elected officials operate in the space. And he says he's lowered the standards. And we need not look too far to find evidence of that. I was just looking at my text messages during the break. Somebody sent me a video of J.D. Vance calling Kamala Harris trash. We know, they've called her a piece of shit. I mean, they've just, the language that they've used, the derogatory, demeaning language that's used at public rallies is just the likes of which we've never seen. How do we ever, Professor Jeffries, go back to a more civil time and discourse when people wanting our vote didn't insult us, didn't call their opponent names, and just didn't, use the most vulgar profanity, language that you would tell your kids, like, if you were at a Catholic school, you'd wash their mouth out with soap, or, just language that you say never ever use, but it's freely being used in this election.
Well, part of the problem clearly is that there aren't any consequences for the use of that language, and consequences in terms of being voted out of office, which is also a function. I mean, all these things are created. We talked about some of the structural issues. A part of the problem with gerrymandering, when you create these hyper partisan districts, so that on the left, you have to, or on the right, you have to swing hard to the right. And there is no reason to moderate. There is no reason to tone down your rhetoric. There is no reason to negotiate or compromise. And so I think that rhetoric is a function of knowing that the best play in this hyper-partisan environment for them is to play to the least common denominator. So until in some of these districts there are some real consequences, and people being voted out of office on that political right, I think we will continue to hear it. I don't even think this Trump loss is going to do it. As long as he is on the scene, people will take their cue from him. And as long as we have these hyper-partisan districts, there's no reason for people, in their estimation, because morality and civility isn't enough for them to moderate their position.
So, Dr. Hill, if Trump remains on the scene, which by every indication he has to, because he's going to still be facing these lawsuits, both in federal court and state court, not just civil lawsuits, which there are many, but these criminal actions that are filed against him as well. So he's got to stay on the scene because he's got to probably open a new presidential account to start raising more money to pay his legal fees. And again, to be positioning himself as a candidate, as if that's a shield from the consequences of his criminal conduct. How do we ever start to build the democracy if the chaos agent in chief is still there creating the chaos and creating or fueling, not creating, but fueling the divide?
Areva, I could answer this question so many ways, but I would say that just very simply, we have to be different. Democrats and then the political groups that are arrayed against Donald Trump, Trumpism, and all that it represents, we have to be different. We have to create a different reality. So you say Trump is about talking about trash, calling other political opponents trash. We have to counter that with positivity. We have to counter that by centering positivity. For everything that he says and those talking about trash, the political opponents have to center positivity. And I would even go and say a love language, because that's what's missing from America. Going back to the 70 million going to go vote for fascism. What are we going to do about that? Talking down to them is not going to work. Offering them a difference maybe will, but talking down to Trump voters isn't going to work, because that's what we've been doing for the last 4 years since 2016. It won't work. We have to have a different approach to create a different reality.
So I don't know if I agree with you, Dr. Hill. I think for a lot of years, we placated the Trump voter. We allowed them privileges to spew their kind of hate and vitriol that they spew. And then Professor Jeffries' Dems got beat up on by their own party for being too soft, for not being tough enough, and for allowing Trump, that was one of the complaints against Joe Biden, was that he didn't fight back hard enough against Trump. So I hear you on the love language. I hear you on embracing people and trying to understand them, not, bickering back and forth with them. But I don't know if that's how you win elections. To your point, Professor Jeffries, about money. Politicians, unfortunately, can't be viable unless they raise a lot of money. And by raising a lot of money, that takes you away from being in community, talking to people, and doing some of that retail politics that people say only happens during election time. So is that possible given the two-party system that we currently have? It's aspirational, and I would agree with it. That's hopefully where we should be. But given the reality we find ourselves in today, is that realistic?
Well, I heard something slightly different when Brother Carlos was talking. I didn't hear, the Michelle Obama of 2016, when they go low, we go high. I heard a little bit of what we saw playing out when Kamala Harris took over the nomination. And it was this sense of, joy, right? We heard the joy, we heard the love. We're like, look, we're going to do this. Speaking in a way that elevates civility, speaking in a way that elevates humanity, does not mean that we don't hit back hard, right? I mean, we have to come hard, but we can do it in such a way that doesn't put us in the gutter with them. Because, if we fight like that, then we as a nation won't win. So we have to fight hard, but we have to fight in a way that centers morality, that centers humanity, even among those who don't want to hear it, even among those who we feel don't even deserve it. I do think we have to elevate our game. Otherwise, all will be lost.
No, I don't think I disagree that we have to elevate the discourse, and clearly Kamala Harris has done that. Not all of her surrogates. Some of the surrogates obviously have been given instructions to, go low, as you would say Trump and his team are going. I guess I'm just not convinced that is, and obviously none of us know the answer to that. Some of these people have been brainwashed to such a degree. I read some folks who said they were at the January 6th insurrection. They got arrested, they got charged, some went to jail, they lost everything, and they said they would do it all over again. So there are a percentage of people who have bought into, Trump ideology that no matter what we do, we can love them, we can embrace them, we can, coddle them. They are not going to see a worldview that in any way remotely resembles the worldview I think the majority of Americans see. But I'm not so clear what the solution is, because some of these people, I have a friend that's gay, he said family members of his are voting for Trump, and he feels like to do so is a personal affront to him, given all the LGBT, rhetoric, anti-LGBT rhetoric of the Trump team and Trump campaign. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure that the answer to that question is perhaps even knowable until we see how badly Trump is beaten. And I think holding out hope that Liz Cheney, Mitt Romney, and other Republicans that used to be quote unquote considered the normal Republicans see what they do, because their party has been taken over by this tyrant, by this, unfit, uncivilized, unhinged tyrant. And as much as we're suffering as Democrats, I can only imagine what it feels like in this moment to be a Republican, to be a, what I'll call a normal Republican, not a MAGA Republican. So I'm curious to see what they are going to do in this moment. When we come forward, I want to talk about some of the early data that's out there, like the data that says so many Americans have voted early. What does that mean? What does it mean when they say, women over 65 are voting in larger numbers than had been anticipated? Young voters are voting in larger numbers. Might this end up being a landslide for one of these candidates? Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, my name is Erica Wiley, and I am running for Superior Court Judge, seat number 48. As a deputy public defender for more than 2 decades, I've always fought for justice. I was raised in South Central Los Angeles by a single mother, so I know the struggles which bring many to the criminal justice system. Over 20 years of experience has shown me that to protect the public, we must provide those who suffer from mental illness, homelessness, and drug addiction with the resources and tools to improve their lives. I am dedicated to criminal justice reform and ending the vicious cycle of mass incarceration. I'm endorsed by the Los Angeles Times, the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, and LA Mayor Karen Bass. Mail in your ballot today or vote in person on November 5th. Erica Wiley for Superior Court Judge, seat number 48. Find out more at my website, wileyforjudge.com. That's WILEYFOR judge.com. Or follow me on Instagram, Wiley4Judge. Paid for by Wiley for Judge 2024. I'll see you at the polls on November 5th. Vote Wiley for Judge, seat number 48.
If you're an adult in need of an accredited high school diploma, the Los Angeles Public Library can help. You can earn one for free in as few as 5 months online with 24/7 access. You also get a personal academic coach plus special training focused on 9 in-demand industries, as well as a resume and cover letter to advance your career. Visit the website at lapl.org/diploma. That's lapl.org/diploma.
From the first day of kindergarten through the day they graduate high school, in California, 38% of students attend a public school that fails to meet minimum health standards. That's why we need Prop 2. Voting yes on Prop 2 will fund urgent repairs at local schools, protect kids from toxic mold, asbestos, and lead, ensure clean drinking water, and repair leaky ceilings and storm damage. Yes on Prop 2. To fix what's actually broken. All funds go to local schools without raising taxes. You heard that right. So join the California NAACP, nurses and teachers, and vote yes on 2. Because all our kids deserve a safe place to learn. Ad paid for by Yes on Prop 2, sponsored by Nonprofit Education, Labor and Business Associations. Ad committee's top funders: California Building Industry Association, California Teachers Association, Coalition for Adequate School Housing.
Have you heard of the 50-30-20 rule? This can help you spend and save your money wisely. So how does it work? Distribute your dollars into 3 buckets: 50% towards needs, 30% towards your wants, and 20% goes to savings. Use this tool to help your journey to financial success. Sponsored by JP Morgan Chase & Company. If you have asthma, you know that there are certain things that can set off your asthma symptoms. These things are called triggers, and patients with severe asthma have an average of 8 triggers. It could be pollen, dust, pollution, colds, viruses, smoke, or stress. If you know your symptoms, you have already taken the first step to managing your asthma. The next step is to write your triggers down in a notebook or journal and record your symptoms when you come across those triggers. This will give your healthcare provider valuable information about what you can do to help manage your triggers. By understanding your triggers and writing them down, you are on your way to taking back control of your lung health. Visit luma-edu.com for more guidance. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
We're back, and I just want to remind everyone that KBLA Talk 1580 is live on election night. We'll have expert analysis, notable guests, and keen insights. And plus, we will be taking your live phone calls. Dr. Nee Corte and I will be live from 4 to 6 p.m. And then Dominique Dupree and Tavis Smiley are holding it down in studio right here on the right here in California at our office in Leimert Park. The live coverage begins at 4 p.m. Pacific time. A bevy of political insiders and regular contributors, including Adrian Shropshire, John Wood Jr., Dion Raymond, and many more. Again, it's live coverage tomorrow right here at KBLA Talk 1580 starting at 4 p.m. Pacific time. As you know, we've got a lot to talk about. There's going to be a whole lot to talk about tomorrow night on election night. A lot of conversations about early voting, Dr. Hassan. I was in North Carolina, the last stop of my 7-state tour, and about 5 days out, a third or more of residents in the state of North Carolina had already cast their ballot. This is very different than 2020, when Donald Trump and Republicans were basically telling Republicans not to vote early, not to vote by mail, to show up in person. They've got a different tune this time around. They are encouraging, just like Democrats, encouraging early voting and telling folks tomorrow, Tuesday, is the last day to vote, not the day to show up necessarily at the polls. How significant do you think that will be, and who's advantaged by all of this early voting?
Well, it was strange in 2020 when Donald Trump was calling for people not to send in mail-in ballots, when that actually was one of the things that benefited Republicans. It was just stupid. And Republican officials were like, oh, hold on, wait a second. But like everything else, they just went along with it. And so this year, it's not surprising to see them, encouraging people to turn out in that way. But at the same time, let's be clear, they have been working very hard for the last 4 years to actually make it more difficult to vote early. Here in Ohio, for example, and many other places, reducing the number of drop boxes or places where you can turn in an early ballot or you can vote early to 1 per county, which is insane. And so despite that, Georgia and doing other things like that, despite that, you've seen this massive turnout. It'll be hard to say, who that benefits. In some areas, it will benefit Republicans. In some areas, it will benefit Democrats. I'm just glad to see it. No matter who it benefits, we should always want to encourage people to vote and make it easier, not more difficult to vote. But that also means that we'll have some sense. I mean, 2 things real quick. We'll have some sense of the direction by the early vote and the early count in those places that count them early, like Florida, like Georgia now. But like Pennsylvania, they don't count those early ballots, those mail-in or absentee ballots, until after polls close. So then in that instance, we won't know. But, so we just have to be mindful of what's happening and where we're talking about, because all of these elections run a little different depending upon where you are.
Yeah, there are states like Nevada where literally you can register and vote up until the last day, which is tomorrow. So there's a reason, Dr. Hill, we're seeing Kamala Harris continuing after giving her closing argument at the eclipse last week in Washington, D.C. She didn't stop. That was her closing argument, but it wasn't her closing rally. She's in Pennsylvania tonight, and she is, there's a series of virtual rallies that will be held, and some still in person tomorrow. So any notion that Democrats are taking this election for granted, that we're sitting on our hands and we're just, expecting a positive outcome, it couldn't be further from the truth. Kamala Harris and, the Democrats all over this country for Congress and Senate have been working down to the wire to get folks out to vote, because in states like Nevada, you can still vote. I do want to switch gears. You can still register, I should say. Real quickly, Robert F. Kennedy taking fluoride out of water, maybe eliminating some vaccines. Why, Dr. Hill, in the last 3 days of the election, would Donald Trump start empowering Robert Kennedy, the conspiracy theorist king, to start talking about how he's going to mess around with our health as if that's going to help? Or is he playing to a base to make sure they turn out because the base believes that Robert F. Kennedy, without any science degree, any medical degree, any degree in anything that would make him an expert on health, is the guy that should be over our health?
Areva, one thing that has been consistent with Donald Trump throughout his very short, tumultuous, impactful political career is that no matter what, whatever is trending, whatever he thinks can get attention, he will say. And that's true. That was true in 2016. That's true today. The only difference is the stakes are higher today than they were when he first was elected. We have had, like you have talked about it already, how his voters have in his head creating a new kind of America. The only thing that stands between us and that new America is voting, is voting for Kamala or Donald. And I think what I'm looking at in terms of early voting, to go back to, what are urban areas telling us in terms of early voting? Because I think they're going to carry the election. What are the rural areas? We know what they might tell us, but it's going to be in these cities, in these battleground states, Las Vegas, Phoenix, where the election is won, lost. And I think because of that, people are talking about it as the closest election in American history. It probably won't be, but how we are thinking about it is the closest election because we think the stakes are so large.
Yeah, I don't know. At this point, Dr. Jeffries, all the pollsters tell you the polls aren't reliable. They say they're not reliable, even though that's what they do for a living. We know the corporate media has an interest in making this like a Super Bowl or a prize fight and keeping the election close down to, the determination of who the winner is, because that's how they keep viewers engaged in various platforms. But I've started to hear folks say that this could be a landslide, give or take, for Kamala Harris. Are you hearing that, feeling that?
I'm feeling it in a sense, but I'm also feeling, look, I don't know. This thing, one, it should be a landslide. That's different than it could be a landslide. It could very well be a landslide. It could also be very close, and she could also lose. I mean, all three of those.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan, for giving us all that.
I know. All three of those are real possibilities. All three of those are real possibilities.
Those are real.
But
Yes, you are correct. Those are all possibilities.
All real possibilities. Let me say this. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a landslide. I really wouldn't be. Because of some of the early returns, because so many of these polls are not polling likely voters. They're looking back and projecting upon an electorate that was 2020 and 2022 and not thinking about that heavy turnout that we might get in Milwaukee that we're already seeing based upon early turnouts. We're not taking into consideration those women who were animated by the loss of Roe, by the rolling back of reproductive freedom. I mean, they're not factoring those, as many as we would like, into the likely voter scenarios that are churning out these polls. So it very well could be not be close. I'm not. That doesn't change how we should approach this. We got to approach this differently.
Areva, it could be really close popular vote. It could be extremely close popular vote, and then a landslide in the electoral college.
Yes,
it could be both.
We've seen
But
that.
but if it's within 20,000 votes, 50,000 votes total, that's a nightmare for us as a country. No matter who, it's a nightmare because that tells us we don't know who we want to be, and that's a problem.
Yeah, we got to decide who and what we want to be. We know the magic number for the Electoral College is 270. I guess when I see folks like Cardi B, I don't know if you guys have seen her give her speech. If you haven't, look it up. It's one of the best speeches of all surrogates because she's so raw, she's so real. And she was in some ways out of her lane, and she was nervous, and she spoke to how nervous she was. And she's the person who said she wasn't voting at all. She said she didn't F with Trump or Biden. But when Kamala Harris got in the race, she changed her mind and said she believed in what Kamala Harris believes in. And she was speaking to her hundreds of millions of fans around this country, encouraging them to get out and vote. And she said it in the most passionate way you could imagine from a rapper, someone from her background. So I think those voices like that, they give me hope. They give me courage. The regular surrogates, I love them. I love everybody that's been out there working hard. But I love when we see folks who are outside of the process traditionally come in and use their voice and use their platform in the way Cardi B did. So check out her speech. It's quite remarkable. Thank you so much, Professor Jeffries and Hill. Next time I see y'all, we're going to have a new president. That is one thing we do know for sure. Always a pleasure to be in conversation with both of you. Stay with us. More about this very close, could be landslide election. We're going to call it that. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.